Hi, class. Welcome to week 3 of PSC 583, Public Policy Analysis. In this week, you're going to read a series of handouts and you're going to check out Appendix C of the textbook. The handouts come from a couple of authors. There's a handout from Anderson, and then there's a couple of different handouts. I'm going to call them handouts. I guess they're just PDFs to you from Weidmer and Veening. What I'm attempting to teach you today is something that if you do manage to take 524 with me, we'll spend 7 whole weeks on, right? So you're just getting kind of a broad overview, really just like a quick little sort of taste of a whole bunch of concepts to make you familiar with the playing field, but we're not going to delve too in depth on any given one of them. The first concept to wrap your head around is the traditional public policy process, right? And this was a 5-step process, and really the origins of this go all the way back to Harold Lasswell in the 1920s. So, it's nearly 100-year-old idea. And the idea is relatively simple. Policies begin with setting an agenda. I'm going to go into each one of these in turn, but I want to just kind of rattle off the 5 for you just so you can hear them all in a row, and then I'll go through each one briefly, and then I will wrap this up. The first step is setting an agenda. The second step is framing the policy. The third step is actually policy formation, right? The third step is policy formation. The fourth step is actually going out and implementing the policy. And the fifth step is evaluating the policy. And in more recent years, this is a newer idea that really came into its own in the 80s and 90s, and it's still kind of fresh today, policy feeding back. And with the policy feedback idea, instead of a line that's going step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it turns into a cycle, right? Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the feedback goes back into step 1, and on it goes. So that's kind of the new way we conceptualize an old 5-step idea, and I want to talk about each step in turn. The first step being setting the agenda. How does one set the agenda? Actually, anyone can set an agenda, right? What's the idea of the agenda? There's only so much we can do as a people, as a democracy, as a republic, as a state, as a city, as whatever, a legislative body, as a news organization, whatever you have. There's only so many things you can talk about at any given time. All right, there's only so much space on the front page of the newspaper above the fold. There's only so much time on the nightly news every night for the top story. There's only so much time, even in the 24-hour talking head, CNN, Fox News type of day, to talk about so many things. And there's only so many things that can be on the top of your feed on Instagram or Facebook or whatever the heck you are looking at, right? Only so many things can go viral on TikTok a day. That's the agenda. The agenda is like, what are we working on today? Now, at the legislative level, they have committees, right? And committees have hearings, and committees mark up bills, and then they have floor time and floor votes on bills and amendments and all this. And, they only have so much time for that, too. So what is it they're going to talk about? For every bill that gets down to the floor, there's another 9, 10 bills that never make it out of committee. The thing that's going to get attention is the thing that has everyone's attention. The thing that's going to make the agenda being what we talk about, is going to be the item that everyone's paying attention to. Now, there's lots of ways to get people to pay attention. Maybe you just write stories about it and people pick it up. Maybe you protest. Heck, even terrorists are often trying to grab the agenda, right? That's oftentimes what terrorists are trying to do, is draw attention to some issue that the media is otherwise forgetting. Legislators will try to get people to focus on their agenda. That's what the bully pulpit is, right? The presidents use. They try to get people to focus on their agenda. So, mayors will try this, governors will try this. Everyone wants to be talking about the thing they want to talk about, and they want attention to go towards the issues that they care about. But like I said, we have limited attention and we have limited time, so it becomes this battle set in the agenda. Once the agenda is set, then you have to frame an issue. And that's much of what you're actually doing last week when you're defining a problem, right? But you can frame an issue in order to make people sympathetic or in order to make people go another direction. Framing is really a complicated kind of thing. I'm going to try to give you an example. It's relatively recent, I guess. It's from like the 2020 Democratic primaries, right? Where you had some candidates talking about Medicare for all and other Democratic candidates talking about ripping private health care away from 120 million people. Now, I don't know if you personally are a huge fan of your private health insurance plan, if you happen to have one, or if you would prefer a public thing, or maybe you're on a public thing now. But whatever the case may be, obviously one of those are both talking about the same idea, right? But one of them is framing it in a positive light, and the other one's framing it in a negative light. One's framing it as giving people something, the other's framing it as taking something away. So that's just one example, but you can think of 1,000 other ways, right? That the spin room can put a spin on something. And so that's what framing is all about, getting the frame right, getting people to talk about the issue on the agenda the way you want them to talk about it, getting them to understand the problem and kind of defining the problem inside of the framework so that we can get to the next step, which is actually formulating the policy, right? This is where you put pen to paper, you start drafting bills, it goes through the process. Guys have seen Schoolhouse Rock, I presume, so I'm not going to bore you with every step there, but obviously you need something that, if it's legislation, can pass the House, the Senate, and then eventually go to the president to be signed into law, and then pass some sort of judicial scrutiny on the other side potentially too. So when you're formulating the policy, maybe that's not the end of it. Maybe then it goes to an executive agency who's given power to regulate, to actually put forth the regulations that execute the policy. But at that point, we're starting to get into step 4, which is policy implementation. And the 4th step, what you're doing is you're actually executing the policy, right? We've gone out of the legislative world of the 3rd step, or the planning world of the 3rd step, into the execution and the second branch world of the 4th step. And so now, do you have the funding you need? Do you have the administrative capacity do you need? Do you have the management plan you need? Do you have the staffing power you need? Are you going to plan it as top up or bottom down? Are you going to engage the private sector and nonprofits? Are you going to try to handle it directly? Are you going to filter it down through states and municipalities or states only, or just try to go around all that and send it money directly from the feds to universities and hospitals or other nonprofits? How is it you're going to make this thing come to reality? How is it you're going to go from an idea on paper to street level bureaucrats, that's boots on the ground executing things? You might be contracts, could be all different means, but you need to figure that out. And finally, that 5th step, you need to go back and evaluate, right? You need to say, hey, did the execution of this plan, did its implementation have fidelity to the formulation, have fidelity to the issue that was brought up and framed and that made the agenda in the first place? And are we successfully meeting whatever goal we set forth way back there in steps 1, 2, and 3, and 4? And beyond evaluating, what tends to happen is as people start getting benefits from a new policy, they start forming new interest groups, right? They form new players. They become new players in the political field. And what they form interest groups to do is to defend the benefits they're now getting so that they won't get taken away, right? And that kind of lock-in effect, we call that path dependence. Once you initiate a policy, it becomes very hard to undo it or change it because people organize to defend the benefit they're now getting. And that's feedback, right? That feeds back into a new agenda because a new interest group exists to lobby for a new agenda now that was created by largely the policy passing. So, the largest interest group in the United States by membership is the AARP. And mostly what they do is defend Social Security and Medicare benefits. Why? Because that's what retired people get now, and they don't want to lose that. And so the American Association of Retired People defend it. Makes perfect sense. But, that's just that policy wheel in action. So you're going to see a lot of these terms you've heard mentioned in the last 10 minutes. You're going to see terms like path dependence, like rationalist model. You're going to see terms throughout this like policy framing, like policy implementation and formulation. And I just wanted to spend a few minutes demystifying that before you dive into the literature. And hopefully you find this sort of a helpful guide to wrap your head around the process as you go and you start reading more in depth about the nitty gritty of how policy gets done. I'll see you again next week.